that take place in Washington on Capitol Hill by what is called the Values Action Team. There's a division of this in the House of Representatives. There's a division in the U.S. Senate. And it involves the heads of various organizations, such as myself, coming together, people who are working in the pro-life arena, the pro-family arena, and all the different values that we would identify as believers. And these leaders come regularly to meetings that give them a chance to interact directly with our friends and allies on Capitol Hill to advance the protection and promotion of these values. So those meetings happen regularly throughout the year. This meeting yesterday was a special version of that, where there were more leaders there from all around the country, names that our friends would recognize. I mean, there were representatives there from the Bishops' Conference. There was Family Research Council with Tony Perkins, Penny our Nance friends would Women for America, various organizations that many of our listeners follow. Of course, the main pro-life groups, ourselves, National Right to Life, March for Life, and others. A lot of attorneys, people who work in the pro-life and pro-religious freedom legal world, so people know about Alliance Defending Freedom, and there's a group called First Liberty that wins a lot of court battles for our values. So it's very, very
Special meeting in D.C. and here to talk with us about that. Father Frank, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Vanessa. Good to be with you.
It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And so this special meeting that took place in D.C. with congressional leaders on pro-life and religious freedom,
Yes.
Was this unexpected, unplanned, or
No,
was this in the works for a while?
actually, and I think our listeners will be very edified to know this, there are regular meetings that take place in Washington on Capitol Hill by what is called the Values Action Team. There's a division of this in the House of Representatives. There's a division in the U.S. Senate. And it involves the heads of various organizations, such as myself, coming together, people who are working in the pro-life arena, the pro-family arena, and all the different values that we would identify as believers. And these leaders come regularly to meetings that give them a chance to interact directly with our friends and allies on Capitol Hill to advance the protection and promotion of these values. So those meetings happen regularly throughout the year. This meeting yesterday was a special version of that, where there were more leaders there from all around the country, names that our friends would recognize. I mean, there were representatives there from the Bishops' Conference. There was Family Research Council with Tony Perkins, Penny Nance of the Concerned Women for America, various organizations that many of our listeners follow. Of course, the main pro-life groups, ourselves, National Right to Life, March for Life, and others. A lot of attorneys, people who work in the pro-life and pro-religious freedom legal world, so people know about Alliance Defending Freedom, and there's a group called First Liberty that wins a lot of court battles for our values. So it's very, very inspiring, of course, and encouraging to be with all these colleagues and friends there in the heart of where so much of the battle for public policy is waged in Washington, D.C. We spent the whole afternoon together and really delved into some of these issues strategically and updating one another. Plus, we had not only congressional leadership there, of course, all Republican leadership, but we had also representatives from the White House and people who work in the administration, people we know and again, interact with throughout the year. But they were there to also speak with us. And this is a White House that, I mean, we know that the president advances our values really strongly on religious freedom, strongly on pro-life, and a lot of other things. But it's not just that they're taking the right positions. They interact with our movement. They listen. They join hands with us. You know, I mean, it's a real partnership, as it should be, as our government is designed to be. And it's really, really satisfying to see that actually unfold in practice.
Yeah, I mean, look at the March for Life. You had the involvement of the White House.
Yes.
Yeah, which you don't always see from presidents. But so do Democrat congressional leaders never come to this meeting?
No, this is something that, I mean, we have an ally in, when you talk about these kinds of values, the pro-life caucus of the House is technically bipartisan, but it's bipartisan because Representative Dan Lipinski of Illinois is a pro-life, but that's about it. When I started with Priests for Life, there were dozens, and many will recall those days back in the 90s. There were dozens of pro-life Democrat congressional representatives. They have vanished. They have disappeared, partly because the party has pushed them out. They don't support Dan Lipinski.
The party's pushed them out because Planned Parenthood has hijacked them. They absolutely, I mean, Dan Lipinski himself did not get, in his recent very narrow reelection, did not get the support of the Democrat Party. And it's like, what is it about this that they're so... But you know what we've come to see? It's not that they're so in bed with the abortion industry and Planned Parenthood. They are. But it's all of a cloth with all these other radical positions that are anti-religious freedom, anti-faith,
And in fact, we're seeing more and more anti-American. And it's scary, but in a sense,
it's very scary.
It makes sense, though, because it does all fit together. I mean, you don't go out there crusading for abortion and then expect to sit down on the table and agree with us on, a whole host of other issues. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, you're opening up a very evil window when you start going down that path. I mean, all the other evil comes to you. You know what I mean?
It does.
And then you get sucked into it all. Yeah. And when you don't, and it amazes me how many Democrats will say to me privately, "Well, I'm pro-life, but I just can't come out publicly because my party won't support me." Well, how about you guys all get together? How about that?
Well,
and be strong in numbers.
And do they push back against the party?
No.
For one thing, I mean, and that's what I mean. Our listener, I've been talking a lot about the Democrats recently, and I always make it clear to people that, for example, among our listeners, I'm sure there's Democrats. And it's like, hey, folks, this is not about you. This is not against you. It is nothing that shouldn't be taken personally. We're talking about how the party and its official positions and its elite leadership has hijacked the whole mechanism, the whole structure of the party, and is using it for evil purposes that do not, in fact, represent the faith, the values, the pro-life commitment of our good people out there in the grassroots. I know pro-life Democrats all over the country, except that they're not welcome anymore in the party, and that's where
that's the problem.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
And I've always told people I'm not a Democrat or Republican, Father Frank.
Neither am I.
Never define myself as one party. I am a pro-life conservative.
Yes.
That's what I am.
Yes.
I'm a pro-life conservative.
That's right.
And I vote for the candidate. And I've always said I wish there were more pro-life Democrats because if you look at the inception of the Democratic Party, they stood for the most vulnerable, helping the need, helping the poor, helping the disabled. That's what the party stood for. And then they're being hijacked by the pro-abortion. So they're going against the whole point of what they became in the first place.
And what we see happening is that they'll still hold on to that language. They will still assert, in fact, when Pope Francis visited the United States a few years ago, there was a group of Democrat lawmakers in the House who signed a letter to the Pope. And we've got this somewhere on our website. And what they said was, Holy Father, we're looking forward to your visit. And then they said in that letter, we stand with you in advocating for the most vulnerable among us. And I did a public response to that letter, and I said, no, you don't. See, they like to use this language. Oh, we stand for the most defenseless. We stand for the most vulnerable. And I said to them, no, you don't. You kill them. The most vulnerable are the children in the womb. Don't say you stand with the most vulnerable. Be honest. Say, yes, Holy Father, we stand with you for the most vulnerable, except the most vulnerable, the children in the womb. No, they don't. Yeah. And then like you were saying a moment ago, once you open that window, once your conscience is so, it's got to get twisted into all kinds of weird shapes in order to allow the killing of a baby. Once you do that, you have so darkened your conscience that you're going to fall off the rails on a whole host of other issues too. As I say, in other words,
when you start justifying.
You start justifying.
The world is gray. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw this, Father Frank, when I worked in government. I worked, as the press secretary, the largest county in the state of Michigan, and I saw this from people, and they saw the world as gray. Everything was gray because they justified. And I said, you guys, the world is black and white, really. There's right and wrong. There's good and evil.
Yes.
You're graying the world so you could justify your decisions. The world isn't gray.
Right.
God gave us a conscience.
There are certain. That's right. There are moral absolutes. In other words, they really are.
They're moral absolutes.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah. So, Father Frank, I want to ask you this. We're going to take a break, but I want to get your opinion and talk a little bit more about the meeting. But the congressional, the congresswoman in Georgia who came out saying, parents or adults who are supporting, including doctors, who are supporting minors with transgender surgery should be considered a felony. And because that's a life issue in a lot of ways too. You're destroying a life. When you allow a child to decide they're going to become
a boy when they're born a girl, you know, and have that surgery. So I want to just get your opinion on that, because we haven't had congressional leaders stand up for a lot of this stuff, and it's a relief that somebody finally is. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and continue our conversation with Father Frank Pavone. We'll be right back. Father Frank?
Hi, we've got our Facebook audience joining us here as well. We're broadcasting the broadcast.
Hi, Facebook audience.
So
I know I don't want to. I threw that out at Father Frank without asking his permission beforehand, but I really want your opinion on that.
No,
Father
that's
Frank.
fine. Yeah. That's an important issue.
Because we talk about congressional people and your meeting in D.C. and obviously on pro-life and religious freedom, but when you think about what's going on in the transgender movement, you are in essence destroying life.
Yeah,
you're destroying life.
It's terrible. So
it's terrible. And when I saw that Georgia congressional congresswoman stand up and saying this should be a felony for your Facebook listeners, I was really relieved, because I was like, finally, somebody at the congressional level standing up and saying this is wrong.
Yes.
This is a child doesn't have a brain to make a decision. I was talking to Dr. Meg Meeker for your audience the other day, Father Frank, and she said children can't even decide what they want for dinner.
That's right.
I mean,
exactly.
They can't. They can't make this decision. So
no.
It just gets my blood boiling. So when's the next meeting, Father Frank, about this meeting you're talking about in D.C.? When's the next meeting?
Oh, we'll pick up after the holiday. Well, I think there'll be a meeting, one of the regular meetings in December, I think, and then we'll pick up after the holiday break.
Okay. Well, all your Facebook followers should be so proud of all the work that you do, Father Frank, for the pro-life movement and religious freedom, and giving all of us a voice that can't always do what you do on a regular basis, and actually inspiring us to do it.
They are.
All right, people, we're going to get back on the air here.
Okay, great.
We're continuing a conversation with Father Frank Pavone this morning here on Catholic Connection. Vanessa Denhagarmo filling in for Teresa Tomeo. Before this break, Father Frank, I wanted to get your opinion. I know it's not typically considered a pro-life story, but the congresswoman, I believe, out of Georgia, who is standing up saying, anybody is supporting a minor getting transgender surgery should be considered a felony. And your opinion about that? I was actually relieved that somebody was standing up against this craziness going on.
Well, with the exception of abortion, of course. I mean, don't we? Do we let minors just decide any other kind of surgery that they want? I mean, do we decide? Do we let them decide? Oh, hey, I'm gonna switch schools now, and or I'm going to not go to school at all, or I'm going to switch religions, or I mean. It's so against common sense that it's unbelievable. I mean, first of all, the idea that your gender is simply mental rather than physical. I mean, if you can decide to change that, well, if you can decide to change your biological gender, then I guess you can decide to change your age as well, because that's no less biological or no more biological than gender. I mean, what in the world is this total break with reality? It's psychotic, is really what it is.
It is psychotic.
Psychosis is a break with reality, right? I mean, this is a break with very fundamental reality. So, I mean, I think that from a legal point of view, I mean, you look at, parental permission to get an aspirin, or to be taken out of school for the day. I mean, if you're going to allow something like this in one very significant arena of life, then are you saying that you're ready to throw out all the other arenas too, where there's any kind of parental involvement?
Exactly. Don't send kids. Don't charge kids with truancy who skip school every day.
Right.
They decided not to go.
Oh, their free choice. That's right. No, this is upside down. It's mentally crazy, and we're going to pay the price if we keep going down that road. That's why it's so good to hear, like you're saying, the one dimension of this, I mean, we all know this is against common sense. But then to be able to see some of our political leaders start to say so, because we know that they, whether it's people in the political arena or people in the business arena or people in any arena, or in the church arena too, we know that there's going to be strong backlash when we speak out about these things. But isn't that part of what we signed up for? You know, the servant is not greater than his master. Christ, we're following a Lord who was rejected, crucified, because of the things he said. He said that he was God.
I got to remind myself of that every day, Father Frank, because I get attacked on social media.
Yeah.
So does Teresa.
Yeah.
For standing up for truth. I mean, I remember last year I posted something about the transgender community wanting to do away with calling Santa Claus a him, saying calling Santa Claus an it. And it was a news story. And I'm like, are you kidding me, people? Stop hijacking our Christian faith. This is part of our Christian faith because Santa Claus is not a thing. Santa Claus is St. Nicholas. Mm-hmm. That's our history. And I got so attacked, and I got attacked even by Catholic media members for posting that.
It's amazing.
Saying I was insensitive.
It's like, what are they thinking?
A news story out of context.
What are they even thinking? What are they believing? Why are they doing this, you know? Well, you know, like you said, it's very heartening that congressional representative stood up. And yesterday, all afternoon, I was in the presence of some of the most committed, heroic, pro-life Christian members of Congress, not just Catholic, but all different denominations. I want our listeners to understand something. And this is one of the things I always come away from these meetings thinking about. There are far more committed Christians, disciples of Jesus, serving in the Congress than we are aware of. The only ones we see, I mean, unless we're paying attention to our own representative, which of course we all should be, you only see the ones that make headlines are a small fraction of the members of Congress. And sometimes, you know, the good guys make headlines and the bad guys make headlines. But understand that the vast majority of those 435 members of the House of Representatives are not in the limelight every day, and yet when you start looking at who they are, and we bring them together, like for pastors' briefings, we'll bring in, you know, these representatives to speak to the pastors, because when these pastors see, wow, these are men and women of faith, these are men and women who are saying, you know, it doesn't matter to me, you know, if I get reelected, it's not the party loyalty that's number one with me. Number one, I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. They are saying things like this, and it's like the pastors that we bring to Washington and the pro-life leaders and other leaders that were there at this meeting yesterday, you know, we come away saying this. We come away saying that's the kind of person we need to have in Congress, and then it motivates us to go home and say to the people, those are the kind of people we need to elect. And it's that motivator, you know. But we talked about a lot of things yesterday, and one of the things, I thanked the members of the Trump administration who were there, and I said, listen, it's not only in the legal things and the legislative things and the administrative steps that the president is taking to secure our freedom and to secure the lives of the unborn, our religious freedom as well as our basic American freedoms. But I said it's also the way he talks about these things, because he talks about these things in a way that gives people, number one, the clarity to say, yeah, he knows exactly what we're thinking and feeling. And number two, that gives us the courage and the permission, if you will, quote unquote, to say it ourselves. For example, when he speaks to pastors, he said, listen, we're not going to punish you for speaking your mind. You preach the word of God the way you believe it needs to be preached. The federal government is not going to punish you for a sermon that you give. And this was, I said to him, I mean, they're taking executive action, they're taking legal action, they're taking action in Congress about all this to make sure the churches know they are free to speak. But I said to them yesterday, I said, even just saying it is a tremendous victory, because a lot of times our clergy are it's not that the federal government is telling them to shut up. They're telling themselves to shut up, you know, because they think, oh, if I say to people, vote pro-life, which is perfectly okay for us to say. There's no law being broken if we get in the pulpit and say vote pro-life. But they imagine, and it's all imagination, oh, well, if I do that, then Monday morning the IRS is going to come knocking at my door. Or maybe what is more close to the real possibility is that, not that they're going to get in trouble with the government, but that they're going to get in trouble with their brothers in the church. And it's like, you know, it's like, wait a minute, guys, you know, Are we being limited by the government, or are we stifling ourselves? So we actually spoke about that yesterday with, the representatives from Congress and from the administration.
Just hearing that there's more Christian, foundation in Congress with people makes me think we got to pray more for these people.
Oh, we do.
Have to pray for them.
Yes. In fact, they prayed yesterday.
And then,
they started this meeting yesterday by praying. And they said, they constantly say to us, we rely on your prayers. They're constantly telling us that. They believe.
Yeah.
They believe in the power of prayer, and they need the prayers.
Mm-hmm. That's a tough place to be. And, Brother Frank, we got about a minute left with you, but I got to ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
For what can we say, or maybe this is something you really need to discern and think about more, but we all do. How can we talk to our brothers and sisters in the Democratic Party who say they're Christian and Catholic and help them see truth? I mean, what can we say to our local elected leaders who are still on this pro-abortion and they claim to be Catholic?
Well, here's what I would say. Before we even go to the religious argument, we have to go to the simple truth of what an abortion is. I reminded the congressional representatives yesterday that those who defend abortion do not describe abortion. So we have to start with our reps by saying this. You really think abortion should be legal? Okay, could you please tell me, medically speaking, how does an abortion take place? They don't talk about that. But if they face that and they start talking about it, maybe something will juggle in their mind that, hey, it's a bad idea to rip an arm off or a leg off of a baby.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Father Frank.
All
it's
right.
always a pleasure talking with you. Father Frank Pavone with us this morning from National Priest for Life. Thank you so much. We're going to head into the National Hour this morning. I'm Vanessa Don Hagarmo, filling in for Teresa Tomeo here on Catholic Connection. We'll be right back.